Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna be talking about Bruno, one of the strongest and most popular marksmen in the game. In this video, I will also talk about how Bruno works in full details, which includes his passive, skills, builds, emblems, along with some tips and guide on how to use him in a match. So, without further ado, let's get started with the video. Bruno is known for his ability to burst down the enemies with just a few basic attacks. And he is one of the most picked marksmen in high ranks and also in big tournaments. But mastering him could be difficult, especially if you have never used him before. So, in order to master Bruno, you must first understand how his passive and skills work. So let's start with his first skill, and after his first skill, I will then talk about his passive. With the help of his first skill, Bruno kicks a powerball on his next basic attack, dealing 100 physical damage to the target, and slowing them by 30%. And once you hit the enemies with the powerball, it will then bounce back towards him and land on the ground. And you can retrieve the powerball for another attack, and you can keep using the powerball by retrieving it from the ground. And this way, you'll be able to use the powerball multiple times without having to use your first skill. And remember, the powerball will bounce towards the direction of your joystick. So if you're running towards the right side, the powerball will bounce and land on the right side. So make sure to keep that in mind, because the powerball is your main source of damage. So make sure to keep collecting the powerballs every time they land on the ground. Now, let's talk about his passive. With the help of his passive, each time Bruno uses one of his skills to attack an opponent, he gets a bonus of 2% to his chance of landing a critical hit. This means he has a higher chance of doing extra damage when he attacks using his skills. And this effect can get stacked up to 10 times, meaning the more you use your skills when fighting an enemy, the more damage you will deal. And his passive is also the reason why Bruno cannot use the attack speed build. Bruno has higher physical attack compared to other marksman heroes, and because of that, he only gains 80% extra attack speed from all sources, including items, emblems, and even talents. Meaning he doesn't benefit a lot from attack speed items, because he only receives 80% of the attack speed from items. Which is why people use only the critical build when using him, as he benefits the most from the critical build. And if you didn't know about that, then make sure to consider liking the video. Now, let's talk about his second skill. With the help of his second skill, Bruno makes a slide tackle in the target direction, dealing 140 physical damage to enemies in his path, and also stunning them for 0.5 seconds. And you can also dash through the walls using this skill, so make sure to take that to your advantage when chasing or escaping from the enemies. And since this is your only source of mobility, make sure to use it wisely, especially during a team fight. Now, let's talk about his ultimate skill. With the help of his ultimate, Bruno kicks his energy ball at the target enemy hero, dealing 250 physical damage and knocking them back. The energy ball then bounces between nearby enemies, each time dealing 150 physical damage. Each hit also reduces the enemy's physical defense by 4% for 8 seconds, and this can get stacked up to 3 times. Use this skill at the start of a team fight to reduce the enemy's physical defense, giving your team a significant advantage. You can also use this to push back an approaching opponent, enabling you to fight back or continue with your escape. Now, let's talk about his builds and emblems. Since Bruno depends on his basic attacks to deal damage, focusing on enhancing your physical attack and critical damage is essential. And for that, this is the best build for Bruno. This build will allow you to burst down the enemies with just a few basic attacks. And for his battle spell, you can go for Inspire. Inspire will increase your attack speed by 55% for 8 seconds, allowing you to burst down anyone in your path. But if the enemies have multiple stun and CC abilities, then I'd recommend you to go for Purify. Purify will remove all kinds of stuns which are used on you, and it will also increase your movement speed by 15%. Now, let's talk about his emblems and talents. For his emblem, go for the Assassin Emblem. As the Assassin Emblem is the most suitable emblem for Bruno, as it provides you with adaptive penetration, adaptive attack, and movement speed, increasing your overall damage potential. And for his first talent, go for Fatal. Fatal will increase your critical chance by 5%, and it will also increase your critical damage by 10%. And for his second talent, go for Weapon Master. Weapon Master will increase the physical damage you get from emblems, equipments, items, and skills by 5%. And for his core talent, go for Quantum Charge. Quantum Charge will increase your movement speed by 30% every time you hit an enemy with your basic attack. Now, let's talk about his gameplay and how to use him in a match. During the early game, Bruno doesn't deal a lot of damage, so you must play safely, and you should also try to last hit the minions, as last hitting the minions will give you more gold. And if your teammates are not rotating to your lane, then I'd recommend you to just hug your turret and play safe. And remember, your priority during the first 5 minutes of the game should be farming. Remember, since you are playing the marksman, the enemies will try ganking your lane right from the very start, especially in higher ranks. So expect the enemies to gank your lane anytime, and constantly keep an eye on the mini-map, so that you will be able to avoid being ambushed. And in my case, I had a pretty bad start, because the enemies kept ganking my lane. And if you ever find yourself in a position like this, then the best thing you can do is playing safe and focusing on getting your farm. So, your early game priority should be playing safe, farming, and reaching level 4. Now, let's talk about his mid-game. During the mid-game, you should have at least 1 or 2 of your core items. And this is the stage where you can start dealing damage. Here, as you can see, I'm stronger than Hanabi, but I'm still playing safe, because I didn't see all his teammates in the map, and I didn't know whether his teammates were hiding in the bush or not, so I'm fighting her back while keeping a safe distance. And during the mid-game, you must also prioritize clearing the lanes and pushing the turrets. But if your team is falling behind, try to help them in a teamfight. And whenever there is a teamfight, make sure to always attack from a safe distance. And if there is no one tanking for you, then it's better if you retreat. So, your mid-game priority should be pushing the turrets, and helping your team by joining the teamfights. Now, let's talk about his late game. During the late game, Bruno can deal an insane amount of damage, and you will be able to kill an entire team without much effort. But even though you can deal a lot of damage, you must remember that you're still a marksman at the end of the day, and the enemies can easily kill you, especially if you're out of position. And during the late game, try not to make silly mistakes like split pushing, rotating solo, and going to unchecked bushes, as one simple mistake could instantly lead to your defeat. And during this stage, you must also know that you are the main damage dealer. And the way you play during this stage will decide the outcome of the game. So make sure to always stay with your team, and whenever there is a team fight, make sure to wait for the perfect moment to enter the fight. Remember, timing and positioning is the key to winning during the late game. And make sure to also keep using your second skill to reposition yourself during fights. You must always keep in mind that the team's victory mostly depends on the marksman as the game approaches late game. And you also have to be more careful around the enemy mage, because Wind of Nature won't work against magic damage. And make sure to always take the Lord whenever possible, as taking the Lord could greatly increase your chances of winning the game. Here, as you can see, my teammates were getting completely destroyed by the enemies. And they even tried to initiate surrender 4 times in total during the late game alone. But instead of giving up, I stayed calm and focused on the game. And in the end, we somehow managed to turn the tide of the game by winning a single teamfight. Remember, marksmen are usually the weakest during the early to mid-game, but they are the strongest during the late game. So never lose hope early, especially when using the marksman. So, what do you think about Bruno? Make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments, and consider liking the video if you enjoyed. And subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Thank you for watching.